I had a group of parents that had a group of athletes that allowed us to let their kids figure it out. The old term, figure it out. My teams are always made up of people that have figured it out or are in the process of figuring it out. And they've all had parents that have understood that um, the ride home, and I've told many parents this, I'm the bad guy. It's no longer your job to be the bad guy, because we put such pressure, and the game puts such pressure on these young girls that if the car ride home is a bad ride, it's going to make the game ugly. And but if they're allowed space, like we said, if the radio's on and you stop for lunch and you're just driving home, then it allows them that time of peace. They don't need to hear it again. They've heard it. Coach Mike was screaming and spitting at me, so I don't need dad. I don't need that. Let me have my space. And I think that most of my parents, fortunately, have given their kids that space, and I think it's very important.
All right, we are joined today on our car ride home with the president of the Orange County Batbusters, the head coach of the OC Batbusters 18U, the PCFL commissioner. I'm going to go through all of your hats. The one of our co-founders with the Alliance Fast Pitch, dad of 4 girls. We're going to hit on that part. I think that's really important. Began your coaching career, it says, in 1993, and first joined the Batbusters organization in 2003. So we'll get to probably a lot of that. Mike's coached, it says, over 55 NFCL Americans. I don't know the last time. It's probably surpassed 60, if not 100 at this point, and it's well on its way. But Mike, 90, I appreciate you.
95.
Is it 90?
95.
Yeah, I figured.
I went through it and counted them.
We'll make sure that we get that updated, right? Well, the whole this is the car ride home. So before we dive into the questions, I want to set the stage in the car. So I'm sure you've spent many times, still do, driving to and from tournaments, to practice, spending time with your daughter. So let's set the stage first. What are we listening to? What's on the radio? What's our music?
Well, I'm an old guy, so I'm listening to classic rock. What ends up happening to a lot of kids nowadays, it seems like they tend to listen to older music themselves when they're not listening to, whatever hip hop or whatever they listen to that they enjoy. But with my daughter now that is coaching with me, she's obviously listened to this stuff for many, many years. So we're usually listening to country or classic rock. That's about the extent of it.
What's your go-to if you're getting ready for a game? Who's your person?
I like stuff like Van Halen and Led Zeppelin, but yet I also like Zach Brown and Kenny Chesney and stuff like that. So I listen to whatever just happens to be on sometimes. I'm not a channel skipper. People skip channels when a song. Once it's on, and that's the way it goes.
That doesn't surprise me.
Or 15-hour drive.
Where are we stopping for dinner on the car ride home?
It depends. If you got time, then you go inside. And I look for, like, I'm a fish person. I love eating good fish in different places. So it kind of depends on that. But if you're just in and out, and I said in and out, it's funny, Jamie, every team that comes in, every college team that comes into STC, Liberty came in and worked out, and like Florida's come to, everybody, they stop at In-N-Out after the airport and they come to STC. So In-N-Out's a go-to for all of us West Coast people. It's pretty common.
Are we going the speed limit? Are you going a little bit over? Are you going a little bit under? What's your style?
A little bit over. I tend to go a little bit over, but I'm not a crazy person. Like if it's 65, I'm driving 70. I'm, my older years, I'm probably a little bit more of a conservative driver. So I've learned that it's like when I drive by a cop, I don't have to worry about slamming on the brakes or anything like that. I just drive and I don't worry about that stuff. So I just put it in reason.
You and I have known each other for a while now, and I'll never forget. I love sharing this story, so I want to start with it. But when I got back into fast pitch and was working at the time at USSSA, and we're trying to launch an elite brand, and I was told by everybody, you got to meet Mike Stith. You got to meet Mike Stith. So I'm like, okay, I got to meet this Mike Stith guy. So I do what I do best, and I want to go get to know you and see, meet you in your element. So three things that stuck out. All right, I can talk softball. We can hang out. We can go have a good beer afterwards. So can you? I want to go back because when I saw that, what was happening at STC? Can you explain? It was your Monday night defense class. Can you kind of give a little background of what you do? What is STC and what do you do on Monday nights with your athletes? Because I think it's incredible.
I think that this goes down to, or comes down to, culture and the overall intensity of the things that we're trying to get them to understand on a repetitive basis. Um, as you know, and you've been there, and many people have seen it. Our weight room is unmatched. What we do, and I'll say that in public, nobody does what we do in the weight room in preparing our athletes. And then the fielding classes tend to incorporate the workouts in the field, moving their feet and doing things. You know, people go to fields and they're on the dirt and they're doing a lot of different things, and all that stuff's good. But there are certain movements that I have seen happen on a field over and over again that I feel that can be repeated best in a controlled environment, whether you're on the turf and doing the things that need to be done. You don't have to worry about bad hops. You can control things. And by implementing that stuff, correlating what we're doing in the weight room, bringing it back into the fielding class, and then pushing that over and over and over and over. You know, I'm an old football coach, so repetitive acts are something that we act on all the time. And it has been a great benefit. I can tell you that there was years where we would have a fielding class and, you know, we'd have the likes of Maya Brady and Tiare Jennings and Alyssa Brito and Hannah Delgado and some of the people that are, you know, stars of college softball right now. And people would come to the cage and watch them do these drills because it was so impressive how good they were and how it was almost a, I don't want to use corny words like it was like an opera, but it was they were so good at what they did that they made it a lot of fun to watch. And we really focus on the things that young girls don't get to do, hip acceleration, foot movement, and the things that create good situations on the softball field. So we just try to replicate that on the turf, and it's and really really fast and really really often. We push it a lot.
I know we have people listening, and I could never get over the scene of that was going on inside this building, and I would have loved that as a kid, where you're surrounded by your peers and they're really pushing each other. But it was such a culture, and I'm still impressed. I go into your facility now, and I'll watch a little bitty 10-year-old that probably weighs 50 pounds. She grabs her program. She goes and gets on the bands. She's not talking to anybody. There's no parents in there. She just gets to work. And I know that's how it is now, but it wasn't always that way. What kind of flipped the switch for you to really look into the movement side of coaching softball?
Well, there's two things, and both of them relate to people. Um, in When we first moved from our old building on the south side of Anaheim Stadium to the north side, that was 2010. That coincided with bringing in several players of the likes of Amanda Lorenz, Sydney Romero, Alyssa Palomino, Morgan Flores, Folly Avu, some of these players that everybody watched go like, holy smokes. And there was 7 All-Americans on that team. And it allowed me, and I can go back even further. At that time, Andrea Harrison was an All-American at UCLA. Katie Schroeder, and what they allowed me to do is they allowed me to grow as a coach. And I say to this day, I learn more from my players than my players learn from me. And I had some very motivated people that would tell me what they felt and tell me how they did things and what worked and what was successful. So I used my eyes and their input to start implementing things that seemed to move the body in the right way, get them to understand how their body's moving. But not only that, you had people that wanted to be great. And so they wanted more information. The more stuff you fed them, they would try it, they would work on it. And then we had Maddie Shipman in there. I had a hitting group of Maddie Shipman, Andrea Harrison, Amanda Lorenz, and Alyssa Palomino. And like that's when they were in high school. They were like freshmen and sophomores in high school. And people would come in and they'd say, wow, those girls are good. And I'm going, No, they're better than good. They're at a different level. But the feedback that they are able to provide as a coach, and I think that that's one of the things that parents and coaches don't. Gary Henning taught me one thing. Sometimes the best coach is able to keep their mouth shut at the right time and just keep your ears open. Listen to what goes on and listen to what the people are telling you. Sometimes the athletes, through their movements or their reactions, tell you what you need to do. And oftentimes coaches nowadays, they all want everybody to know they have an opinion and they just blurt it out loud all the time. And I wish that some of these people would understand, listen to their athletes. And that's what, as we built STC, we pulled all of the information out of the athletes to build what it is. And then the second thing was um, bringing in Stratton. Stratton Kim has grown with me. He is an expert at the female athlete, the body movements, the proper body movements. When I our first friendship started, and then that led to me getting to coach the Pride in 2018. And I sat one day out in the practice field, Lauren Chamberlain and Sierra and Megan Wiggins, who I think at some point will be a great coach. These great players, I asked them, when you were 15, what would you want to be done differently? And they all had the same answer. Especially Lauren was telling me, well, I wish somebody taught me how my body moved, how my body reacts to certain things that I see. And that's the thing that I've always leaned on now with training. And that's why I think you see the training and the development of the players, it's at a different level now. The physical makeup of these people. And here again, I go sucking the information out of my players to develop what the next generation of players should be. And I think that that's what makes STC so unique. Today, I have players in there that are going to be All-Americans, that are going to be great players. We have so many 9 and 10-year-olds that are coming up, and like I would have, say, Taylor Shoemaker walk up to a 9-year-old and say, no, don't do it this way, do it this way. And they look at him like, holy smokes. Like, but that's what makes it's a constant turnover. And so it's quite unique. And the athletes can build more than you think if you keep your mouth shut and listen to them sometimes.
I tell you this all the time, but I know when I went in as a freshman in college at A&M, they kind of put the freshmen to one side. We had to learn form, we had to learn the basics, right? So we were already kind of behind from everybody else. Your athletes today, they're going in and they're probably ahead. If not, they're definitely working with their teammates because they learn this foundation at a young age. Why do more youth softball coaches and programs not do this, do you think? Why are we not seeing more? Or is it changing and are we starting to see more?
Well, I think that they're starting to see more because it's sink or swim, instinct to survival. They're going to have to survive and they're going to have to compete with these people. But I can give you a couple key examples. Tiare Jennings and Maya Brady were both freshmen of the years. They walk on campus, and their physical makeup is such that they're a junior walking on campus. Who's leading Oklahoma right now in offense? Jocelyn Erickson. And it's because of their preparation and their commitment to be great and their weight room knowledge, their physical makeup, their understanding of their body movements. And it's going to get bigger and better. And, Tiare's first 4 at bats in college as a freshman were home runs. And Amanda Lorenz sent me a text when that happened. And I said, oh, well, Amanda, she was not playing a great team. And then I got berated by her for that's not true. And, but that just goes to show you when these people walk into the college world, physically and mentally, they're at a different level. And that's what's quite unique with the preparation. And like anything, we're talking about the car ride home. I had a group of parents that had a group of athletes that allowed us to let their kids figure it out. The old term, figure it out. My teams are always made up of people that have figured it out or are in the process of figuring it out. And they've all had parents that have understood that the ride home, and I've told many parents this, I'm the bad guy. It's no longer your job to be the bad guy, because we put such pressure, and the game puts such pressure on these young girls, that if the car ride home is a bad ride, it's going to make the game ugly. And but if they're allowed space, like, we said, if the radio's on and you stop for lunch and you're just driving home, then it allows them that time of peace. They don't need to hear it again. They've heard it. Coach Mike was screaming and spitting at me, so I don't need dad. I don't need that. Let me have my space. And I think that most of my parents, fortunately, have given their kids that space, and I think it's very important.
I love that. You mentioned Tiare, and I want to use Tiare because, again, I go back to the first time that you and I met. Tiare was in 14U, and I'll never forget. She led off the semifinals and the national championship game with a home run. And we've watched her now through University of Oklahoma become this star. But Tiare, you told me back then that she'll be the starting shortstop for the USA national team. What was it about? Because she didn't start with you when she was a senior in high school. She started as a young kid and worked and developed. Can you talk about just her progression as a youth athlete?
Her, like many others before her, they have a drive to be successful. And I use the term whole. And this, people will say it's corny or whatever the case. I don't care, because the one thing, I love all my kids. I just really love what they do. And Tiare's whole. Her heart from the inside out is whole. So the pressures of the game are not, they're just not that big of a deal, because she's complete. So she stopped playing today, which she's not, but if she stopped playing today, she's whole. She's good. She'll move on to life and do great. But it takes time to create. There's a lot of athletes with that spirit inside of them. I've always felt that it's our job as a coach to find it. It's not always teaching them how to step with their right foot or to glove angle. Sometimes there's different players. I don't say anything to them. I just let them field the ball and let it be what it is. But it's the motivation to be great. And that takes time, and that takes a culture to shake that out and find out what makes them work, and then pinpoint that and get them to move forward. And if they don't, if they're not supported in failure, and I can tell you, and Tiare will tell you, that you ever get her on a podcast, she'll tell you, she has had some tough days, and nobody has recognized that more than me and reminded her of that more than me, and probably now Coach Gasso. But it was never a negative thing, because she always knew what she wanted to become. And I gave her my space. I get on her and pushed her and demanded more from her, but there was always that space. She knew whose side I was on all the time. And I think that the parents need to understand, their kids need to understand what side they're on, because when you're driving home or when you're doing whatever you're doing with the kids, there's a Coach Mike out there that's making it hard on your kid and trying to test her and make her better. And it's up to the parents. Sometimes you just got to give a hug and keep your mouth shut and just drive home, because it is what it is. But it's the motor. It's the motor inside. I saw it at 9 years old. Robert Young put together this team, and they Zeta Pooney and Alyssa, they were all on that team. Julia Kutsanopoulos, they were all on this team together. And you could tell with Tiare was a stick figure. She looked like, a stick woman running around at 9-10 years old. And I knew right away. I saw it right away. I go, okay, this she gets it. And so trying to cultivate that in her growth as she built it up, is the secret to this. And sometimes it's not always yelling at them. Sometimes it's just keeping your mouth shut and going along with how they're progressing.
Something tells me, Mike, that you learned that along the way too, right? Started as a football coach. You were a dad, that you got into the game with Kristen, correct? And coaching. Do you ever think back sometimes, and if you were going to coach yourself as a young coach, of what would the Coach Stith now told the beginner Coach Stith?
I can tell you there was my tough enough teams back in the late 90s. We won 3 national championships in 5 years. We were really good. And but when I started coaching with Gary, there was one day we were playing in a tournament, and and if you ever speak to Taryn Mowat, she was on the team, and my daughter Katie was was our catcher, and Gary said no yelling, and I'm thinking that's like I coached at St. Paul High School. We were like we were intense. Like it was I mean, it was on. And guys that have played football or played in a parochial program, they'll tell you. I mean, it was on. And that's how I coached softball. And it took me time to and I didn't necessarily stop yelling. What I did is I learned how to yell, which sounds silly, but you learn like your kids got to trust you. And you're right. It takes time to develop that. And I'm always thankful for Gary for teaching me, just shut up and let them be. And it has allowed me to observe more. And I think the more you observe, the more you learn, and it's a blessing. It really is. And so the kids, we had some tough days on Tough Enough. Jamie Warres will tell you. Jody Legaspi, we had some great people on that team, but yet nobody wanted to play us because they knew I was just going to be screaming at my team and pounding. One year we were 117-1 one year. It was incredible. So I see all these guys now, but they don't understand screaming and yelling, do all this stuff. I was able to do it differently. I was able to do it in a way that was building and not a breakdown. I never insulted my girls, never demeaned them. I never spoke down to them. We were always on the same team. And I think that there's a knack to that. And some people get it and some people don't.
I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but you started coaching your daughters. You were coaching football. I know you had a landscaping business. When did you decide to go all in with softball? Your daughters were done playing at that point, but when did you decide to go all in for softball, and what made you make that decision?
It wasn't my choice. During the bubble back there when the economy tanked in 2007, I got laid off, and we had just opened my facility. This was the first STC just on the south side of Anaheim Stadium, and I got laid off. I planned on open that and continue to work. Well, we had already signed the lease and was building the place, and I get laid off, and my wife wasn't very happy about that, but we just did it. And I can tell you some famous stories. We had, for those of you who don't remember, Brittany Schutte, she played at Florida. She was a big, strong kid. And Richard MacArthur and I are building this place, and we were only able to open part of it. And Brittany Schutte hit me in the rib and broke my rib. And so I'm trying to do lessons like 18 hours a day to pay the rent. And Brittany Schutte breaks my rib. And these are the things that the passion that comes out in me now, I think have been built because of things like that. Like people that have struggled through businesses and built businesses would tell you, like, there's no stopping. There's not like a day. There's not like people say, well, when's your day off? I'm thinking, well, what do you mean by that? Like Christmas, I don't go into Christmas. I don't go into Mother's Day. There's different things, but people don't understand the amount of passion that is built in because of instances like that. But 2007 is when I went in full time, and it wasn't my choice, but it's been rolling ever since.
Well, we're definitely happy to have you full time in the game. And speaking of that, I want to kind of transition, because speaking of building businesses, you've been a really key foundational piece of starting the Alliance. And I think that there's a couple conversations that have happened in the past probably 4 years, and you were involved in all of them. And to me, that's really what has transitioned our sport. And the first one was a simple lunch that you had with Tony Rico. Can you explain what happened with Tony? Hey, we got Firecrackers and Batbusters. For anybody who knows the history of travel ball, those two brands aren't supposed to get along, right? But take us back. What happened with that lunch? Who initiated it, and what was that conversation about?
Tony initiated it, and it came about from as when I took over the Batbusters, Mark Campbell and I, I'm different than Gary, and I'm different than Mark, and people, you just come about things, and I think that one day Tony just felt like the passion that we're showing in this. He is a person that appreciates passion. He appreciates drive, and he appreciates the odd things that people may say in their life or see in their life. But I think that he recognized that there was a potential to just have a conversation and start to work together on some things. And yeah, he set the lunch up. We met at a BJ's in Orange. That was the first time, and it led to we had a meeting. You should have seen it. So Tony set up this meeting of all of our coaches of Batbusters and Firecrackers, and if you would have seen that, it was almost like it was really funny because all the Batbuster guys went on this side of the room, and all the Firecracker people went on this side of the room, and they were kind of looking like it was really just kind of a bizarre feeling until Derek Allister was there, and Tony kind of lightened up the room. He said, "Hey, you got," like, he kind of just lightened things up. But what happened was we saw that we're different people. Tony's different than I am. We do things a lot differently, but yet we have a similar passion to get kids to realize what their potential is, and to open them up, and to try to get them to do things differently. And the uniqueness of the differences is what makes the uniqueness of the relationship better. And I think that we both appreciate each other, what we do, and I think those conversations should be had by more people. Most coaches, when I go watch, it's kind of, I go watch 12 and under games, and I look at the coaches, they're all angry, and they're, I just laugh. I just go, God, I just wish these people would just coach instead of be fools. I just wish, because a lot of them have a lot of things to offer. But I look back, and I had people like Danny Murakami and Daryl Pratt who helped me realize what mattered. And sometimes I look at those guys, and they have not had that. So it's our job. And Tony realizes this as the Alliance and as friends of the Batbusters and the Firecrackers. And I'll throw Marty in there as well. We've had some great conversations with Marty as well. But all of us are just trying to make these families see things and do things and let their kids grow. And it's quite unique. It's helped the sport a lot. And we got a lot of work to do still, but we'll keep plugging away at it.
Well, and I do feel that, that conversation with Tony and the Batbusters and the Firecrackers starting to work together led to more people from organizations saying, hey, what if we work together? And now fast forward today in 2023, we're on our third season of the Alliance. And there was a conversation even back in Colorado between yourself, Tony, Scott Smith from the Bombers, Greg Schnudi from the Bullets. Can you explain just why that was important and why it's important now with the Alliance and what we're doing?
I think what we all saw at that point was the game was losing an edge with competition and structure, because it became somewhat of a, I guess it was kind of, you had to be in the know to be in a position of advantage. And I felt that it was affecting the overall competitiveness of the players. And that was our main focus of what we spoke about that. And I remember that was the first time they had opened that monstrous hotel, that big old hotel there in Aurora. And we met there, and Scott was there, and I can't remember everybody that was. Jeremy may have been at that meeting as well. I'm not certain, but we sat down and we just talked about our sport, where we're at. We talked about the sport itself and what was going to work, and where were our shortcomings, and how could we, as the leaders of these programs, help the sport. And the term Alliance, the name Alliance is not an accident. It is there for a purpose, and is there to describe the overall forming of the group. It was an alliance of very competitive people that wanted the sport to grow more. And it was Scott and I have a very good relationship because our passion is the sport. He's a good guy. Trust him. Tony, obviously our friendship is quite unique, but putting everybody together and then keeping everybody in line and staying on focus has been easy, because our line is the same. So it has been easy to just keep developing that. And you have been, I know people don't like talking about themselves with a case. You have been the perfect person for this, to manage these, and you can call them egos, whatever the case may be. We're all alphas. We all run our programs. We all want things done a certain way, but all of us have allowed you, because of your leadership, to lead us. That's kind of what you're dealing with, and you have to learn how to filter through that. And it wouldn't be done without Shannon and some of the people that help us. But it is truly an alliance, and it won't change. It's only going to grow. We'll keep making it better.
Mike, what do you want to see in the game? Because now that you've been at different roles, and we're on this new path, and my coach always talks about legacies, but what do you want to see, and what do you want your legacy to be in this game?
What I would like, and I've said this since day one, and you're aware of this, I would like there to be a professional league. And I think that I can tell you an interesting story. When I first went and coached the Pride in Cathedral City that one weekend, I had never watched an MPF game, not one. And here I was deep in softball. It was one of the best summers of my life, dealing with who I dealt with, the players, the professionalism of the players, the excitement of the games. It was quite unique. And so I have been told by many people there will never be women's professional softball. I've been told that. People, yeah, it's not going to happen. I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. I think that we need to wake people up to our uniqueness of our sport. But I think the whole demeanor of the athlete would change the day that right now men stop playing when they can't play anymore. Women have to stop playing because they're told to. There's nothing for them. And I think that we, as us older guys, I'm an older guy now, as we do this, we need to do something to leave that in better shape. We need to develop something that can provide women a chance to continue playing, because it is a lot of fun coaching them. And that's what I want to see done before we shut this down, before I move on and live in Idaho and not get involved. I'll never stop coaching, but back off a little bit. I want in a position where there's something more beyond college.
Well, and I'm never going to stop bugging you too with new ideas. So there is no retirement in Mike Stith. I want to have some fun here of just like storytelling and pick your brain. One is you mentioned Marty, and I think when I think of brands, and especially in Southern California, you think of the Batbusters, you think of the Firecrackers, you think of the Corona Angels. How did you and Marty first meet? Can you explain when you first met Marty Tyson?
I was coaching the Chino Valley All-Stars, and this was probably 93, 92, 93, something like that. And he was coaching the Corona All-Stars. And we played at a park in Chino in an all-star tournament. And it's not much different than it is today. He was going nuts. So I had a bunch of little kids, and we bunted, and Marty was yelling at me. He didn't even know me from, another guy. He was yelling at me. We don't bunt here. Because he was out of major. He was a baseball player. He was, and I can't remember where he played, and I know, but he was drafted and he played in the pros and stuff. And he, like, they didn't bunt. We don't bunt in baseball. We don't do that. Well, my kids are bunting and slapping. I had a couple fast kids, and the relationship grew from there. And it was odd because we were rivals. When he finished All-Stars, he started a team called Gold Rush. That developed into, he started working with Crunch, with Napoleon, and then developed the Corona Angels. But that rivalry never changed to this day. And we talk about it to this day, the Corona All-Stars and the Chino Valley All-Stars. But, he is a guy that there's not a lot of people like him that is all in, hands-on with his athletes, teaches his athletes, has a passion to teach his athletes, and will continue to do that. And I think that our similarities have allowed us, like, we can say things to each other that other people don't, they can't, because of our similarities in our approach. You come to a Batbuster Corona Angel game, it's usually pretty intense, because we know that you're being gauged on your standing in our sport based on that game. And so it does matter. And sometimes we'll play games, we'll have subs and things like that, but we'll acknowledge each other and say, okay, well, we're going to start our starters today. Everybody's on. Okay, it's on. It's on. Marty will walk up to me and say, is it on today? Yeah, it's on. Okay, let's go. We're going to play. And that doesn't happen all the time, but yet when it does, it's special. And he and I have played some incredible games with our teams, and I think that they're quite unique. And to this day, our kids continue playing on in the college levels, and that'll keep going too.
Well, in between the two of you, there's 8 daughters. I think what three daughters coach with him, and one of your daughters coaches with you in the Batbusters organization. What does that mean to you to coach with Katie and to have her, as part of everything that you're doing?
Well, Katie is far more impressive than me with her knowledge. She's super smart. She's super organized, very meticulous about what she does, and it, at some point, I don't like to use the term pass on or whatever the case may be. I'm trying to build something, and her intelligence and ingenuity will be quite. It'll grow our brand. It'll be different. I often say this. I at some point I want to be able to put somebody else in charge of being the commissioner of the PCFL, because we need. I'll be honest and just say we need smarter and more forward-thinking people to help grow the brand. And that's not me. I can coach, but doing the things that you do with Alliance, there's several instances that we need to grow. And having Katie in that role with the Batbusters is quite unique. We have other people that help us coach, but obviously she is quite unique in her organizational skills and what she can do. And it took us a few years to recover from the loss of Mark. And Katie, now I have Katie that helps me. She understands her role now in the development aspect with the 14s. And we're back in stride a little bit now. So she's invaluable.
Well, I was going to ask you, and you mentioned his name, but what did Mark Campbell mean to the Batbusters and to you guys? And for people that don't know Mark Campbell, can you give a little bit of background with Mark?
Well, Mark was, and I'll just be blunt, he was a hard ass. He was a cop. He was, he was a very decorated and successful police officer in Inglewood. He was involved with SWAT. He was involved with the drug investigations. He was a detective. He did everything a cop could do in a career. And he brought that same no nonsense, no gray area, black and white, here it is. He brought that approach to how he coached. And it provided for me, when the kids would come through, like he had Tiare and all those kids in 14 and under, and he brought these kids. He coached Deja Mulapola since the time she was 8 years old. Some of these players that are out there playing, he was such a hard line coach that it cultivated that hardness. So by the time they come to 18s, a lot of that stuff was taken care of. But yet he was a different voice. Like Mark would do something because he knew what I was going to do. And then I knew I would do something because I knew what he was going to do. It was like having that second person there, and they call it your right-hand man. And he was more than that. We were both just step and step all the time. And Nick DiGirolamo came back last year. Nick had coached with Mark for like 23 years. And during COVID, I lost Nick. Nick had his daughter got married. They moved to Texas. And because of all that, craziness that was going on, he was involved in Texas. He retired and he came back last year. And to me, it was the difference. It brought back the spirit of what our relationship with Mark, we brought it all back together again. And we're in that same hard line move forward now, by bringing Nick back. And when you lose your best friend, it's very difficult, but yet you understand what he wanted to do. So you continue to build upon it after that. And I think that's a legacy as such that can be continued. A legacy doesn't end. It needs to be continued. And I think that's So this book has the last chapter hasn't been written. It's a long way from that.
Mike, you remember that time it was 14U and the two you guys had come to our national at USSSA and it was 14U Batbusters versus Batbusters and Mascarenas's first year 14s beat Mark's second year 14s.
Well, if you
I'll never
watch a
forget
college
it.
softball game, you'll watch the players in those games and you'll say, "Wait a minute, she was in that game." Um,
Makes sense.
it was quite a group, and I watched Angelina pitch for Central Florida, and she was pitching in that game. We had Tiare and Julia Kutsanopoulos, and there was a lot of good players and great kids and parents that were able to, like, people don't understand when you have a group. People say, "Well, Mike, why did you move Tiare and Zeta to that team, and why?" Like, they don't understand. Like, there's things like that happen to where it just it the knowledge and the intensity and the development of these players just explodes, because what you do is you put them in situations to challenge each other and grow. And games like that are a perfect example of what that is. It's, you had the older kids and the younger kids won, and there wasn't, I mean, it was on. And of course Tony would remind Mark of that pretty regularly, which she does. She's quite the antagonist, and she would remind Mark regularly about that loss.
Oh, I will. I'll never forget. It's probably one of my most fun games to watch because of the inside stories. Speaking of championships, we had our second AFCS last year, and shoot, you helped build the format for that tournament. And the whole concept behind our AFCS was we want this to be like college softball. We want to put these kids through the ringer, right? We want to prepare them for exactly what they're going to face when they go to the next level. And I'd say your team went through the ringer. In fact, you lost in the Elite Eight, which is equivalent to Women's College World Series. Then you had to come back. You had to beat the Athletics Mercado team that had just won it last year. Then you have to double dip Tony in the Firecrackers to only then go play the Bombers and have to beat them twice. What did that national champ? You've won a lot of national championships, but what did that one mean to you last year and what you guys had to go through?
You know what? There was more to it than the games themselves. It like we lost, the Bombers beat us 13-1. I mean, we didn't lose a 1-run game to them. They beat us 13-1.
I didn't want to
And
say the score. I'll let you do it.
well, but what it does is I hope that this, I don't want to rub this on Scott, because Scott, his team is great. We were just fortunate that day and things went our way. But um, they this is what the alliance is all about. This is why we built this. It forces you to strategize. It forces you to start playing different cards that you don't know you would have had to have played. When do I start my number 3 pitcher? When do I bring this kid off the bench? When do I sit my catcher? When do I rest kids? Do I do, like, there's so much strategizing involved other than just rolling your big horse out there and throwing and shutting people out. Those days are gone. The teams are too good. They're too deep. And the tournament is structured to where having to beat somebody twice is quite unique. And it's one thing to beat somebody, but to come back and beat them twice is quite the event. And that's why we put it in the way we did. You talk about competitiveness and creativity and digging down, all these things that we all describe as athletes. That's what we have put in place with the Alliance. And people can go do convenient things and play and do whatever they want to do. But if you're going to challenge your kids and you want to put your kids in a complete preparatory position to play elite level college softball, there's no other environment than that tournament. We went through a lot of peaks and valleys. We had a lot of things dealing with Mark and injuries and doing different things. I talk about Jossie Erickson all the time. Jossie Erickson had the greatest summer of any Batbuster, and I've been here since 2003. And I know Gary had incredible players, but what she did was, like, not only was it mind-boggling, and it's continuing today. She's batting like 570 at Oklahoma, and what it does is you kind of stand back and watch great players perform greatly. And I think that that's quite unique, but that wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the structure and how it was built, because you have to kind of dig down and you have to strategize on how to make this work. And I think that that's what this provides. It's quite an environment, and it's a unique tournament because of that. So the structure itself is quite unique, and it creates the opportunities for athletes to do things beyond belief.
Like a triple crown which is still incredible and will stand probably for a long time with Jossie Erickson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put you on the spot, Mike, to close it out. And I mean, you've mentioned a lot of the players you've coached, so I think this is going to be a little difficult. But first, it's going to be the first thing that comes to mind. So I'm going to give you some rapid fire. Greatest Batbusters team of all time.
Oh, last year's team was pretty incredible because of the characters and the depth of what they became. Their character was unmatched. But there's no way, when you look on paper, the team that won in 2014 was really, really just the amount of great players. And the 2014 and 15 team, I don't know if you can match that. I really don't, with the people that were on that team. Last year's team, character, structure, and bonding as a team was unmatched. Those kids had incredible character.
What was the starting lineup of that 2014-15 team?
Amanda Lorenz. I can go around it. We lost Alyssa Palomino, and Sydney Romero got taken to Team USA, and I was all worried. Every year we seem to lose kids to the national team, and it would keep us from winning. So I found my other shortstop, who I didn't know would make it work, but that was a girl named Sophia Reynoso, who ended up having quite a career at Florida. But Sophia was my shortstop. Tannen Snow was at third. Taylon Snow played second base on that team. Deja Mulapola, Taylor McQuillan, Folly Avu. That was quite a group that kind of grew into pretty good. Morgan Flores was on that team. There was a lot of good players, and they were all, to use the term, dogs. They were all leaders. They all had their own toughness about them.
Most athletic player you've ever coached?
Most athletic player, I off the top of my head, you asked me for, would be Lauren Lappin. I got to coach Lauren her senior year before I joined Gary, and Lauren was, Lauren was at that time a catcher. She was a great catcher, and then she played shortstop that year, and she could do pretty much anything. But you asked me about the most athletic person. She was pretty much capable of doing anything. It was incredible. If I remember right, she was all CIF in 4 sports her senior year, or something, like some crazy soccer and basketball and softball.
Sounds probably valedictorian too. Sounds about right. Most challenging player you've ever coached?
Oh boy, there's a boatload of them. The challenges are, I guess my first answer would be my daughter. Coaching a team with your daughter on it is very challenging, because you have to wear 2 different hats and you have to come home. So, my car ride home was different. So you have to be careful of that stuff. But there's different types of challenges. You have physical challenges. If you're dealing with an injury, there's people that are challenged in different ways. That's a tough one, and I would have to think about that. Sid and Sierra were both challenging, because they had a way about them that, like, practice wasn't the biggest thing on their list at the time. They did their work, but it was going to be on their schedule to a certain extent. But yet they were also the best teammates that wanted the most success and were very driven. So I said earlier, I talked about how you got to learn how to walk the line differently with different players. And they were challenged knowing how to motivate at the right time, because their training regimen was was what it was. They got all their work done, but um, it was challenging to get that performance out of them all the time, because we as coaches wanted everybody to do things perfectly all the time. Well, they did it perfectly when it mattered, and that's so I learned how to grow into that. Like, I talk about keep your mouth shut and just let them do their thing, and that's what I learned with both of them. And boy, were they great teammates. They all these kids thrived, and I think it's the conditions you put them in. But boy, were they tough to. They didn't want to lose. I tell you that they were tough-minded people.
They still don't.
No, no, they don't.
What about and this could go any way, but one of the biggest surprises in regards to a player that you've coached?
Oh, Sophia Reynoso, no doubt. Sophia, um, we laugh about this all the time. I could beat her in a foot race, but yet at Florida, she would steal bases. She would drop bunts down. She was just a magnificent understanding of the game. She had a sixth sense that I didn't realize until I just left her alone, until I just kind of kept my mouth shut and let the player play and let her do her thing. Boy, was she an incredible player. Had a good feel for the game, but she was the most surprising player that I've had. Last year, I had Sydney Saldana was a pitcher that I had that is at Utah State now. That she was quite surprising in how she figured it out. She wasn't going to dominate anybody, but she learned how to become a pitcher and how to get people out, and that's all I asked her to do. And she kind of grew in quite a role. But there's a whole list of them. I go back to the most difficult person. There was a lot of difficult ones, because of their competitiveness. How you teach them to keep their mouth shut and open their eyes and open their ears. That's quite unique for a younger kid.
I love that. This one, I'll make you talk non-Bat Busters. Who's one of the greatest travel ball players that you've ever coached against?
Jerry Glasgow's daughter was a monster in travel ball. She was tough. She was a good player, really really tough, um, and in many ways, from her knowledge of the game and how well she played, she was really tough. Um, I can name a list of Corona Angels that obviously Megan it was real tough, and she still is to this day. And Rachel, but what they did is those great players bring out great performances, and but they're tough. He had some hitters. He had some real good teams, and their ability to hit was always tough to manage and always tough to figure out. But they brought out the best in us at times because they were so good. So sometimes people think, well, you beat them, they beat, and no, it has none of that. It's the progression of the players, the competitiveness of the players that was quite unique to watch.
All right, last question, and I just thought of this one. I'm going to really put you on the spot. This is a super important question, but now that you know me, which brand of travel ball coach would I have fit best with? Would I have been a Bat Buster, a Firecracker, or Corona Angel, or maybe something else?
Well, my first comment would be you would fit in wherever you decided to go, because you would figure out the personality of the people you were dealing with, and you would learn how to thrive in that environment. But as a blue collar grinder, that most people probably don't know your background, where you come from, you would have made a good Bat Buster, because we're no nonsense. People always were scared to come to the Bat Busters because Mark and I were mean and all that kind of stuff. And like anybody, that once you get to know us, it's just part of who we are and what our motivation is. But yet we don't celebrate much. We don't hooting and hollering, and you're not going to see any carrying on. You're not going to see people dancing out at second base because they got a hit in a game that doesn't matter. I teach my kids how to be humble and how to just keep their mouth shut and win. And we're big on that. And I know there's a lot of people that don't like that want to do the celebrating and want to do all the hoopla. And I think you would have fit into that environment well.
Last question. Who is that in the picture back there, and are you going to coach long enough to coach her?
That's Penny, and Penny is is 8 now, and Penny hunts and rides motorcycles more than she plays softball. She lives up in the country in Nevada, and
That's how I
although my
started.
daughter, yeah, I know that she and they do play soccer and they do things. They just don't have the amenities um, and the level of competition. So, like one thing I've learned, we'll see how this plays out. Um, I have 3 granddaughters and now have a grandson, or 2 granddaughters and a grandson now. And I don't know if it's going to be a granddaughter or grandson. Kristen is pregnant, so we'll have another one here shortly. But I have a grandson now in Lane. Kristen got married, and he's with us. So there's a lot to do outside of this. All of us softball coaches, we do have other lives. We do have um, the one thing I've learned, and I think that I've done that has kept me going so long, is when I leave the field, I go get a cup of coffee, and it's out of my mind. I don't spend time laboring over it. I know I can be content with what our kids are doing, and I've learned it provides you peace in the rest of the day. When I come home, I'm my wife and our kids have moved out for been years now, and I think that is my salvation a little bit. It kind of allows me just to back off, check out, and not to worry about things. And it has allowed me, so when I'm in it, I can be as intense as ever.
Yeah, I heard you're way easier on him than the Batbusters.
But at times, no. But he's learning. But yeah.
Well, Mike, I appreciate it. I hope everybody else enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. I know I've been fortunate to get to hang out and get to know you. And as a competitor myself, I get it. There's the on the field side, but there's a really just caring and great person that I've gotten to know, and just really appreciate what you do for the game. I don't know if I tell you that enough, but it's very much appreciated, and I'm glad that more are getting to see that.
Jami, when you do this and you do think you treat people right, it's amazing the blessings that come your way because of how you treat people and what you do. I think it's important as we grow the alliance to keep doing things the right way, treat people well, and always understand dignity and class. And that's our big thing with the Batbusters. But as the alliance grows, I think it's important to understand dignity and class and how you treat people, and the truth and the the level of truth will play out. It we'll just keep doing what we do. We can be better. We got to be better. There's areas where we got to get better and grow at and make sure we're reaching more people. But nobody does what we do with outreach to the athletes, with the scoring, the player recognition, and the things that we have going on. And that's all been led by you. And I just we need to make that grow to give more kids the opportunities just to see their name highlighted for a player of the month or something. It's a big deal as these kids grow.
Well, thanks, Mike. I will go ahead and sign off here, and I'm sure we'll have many more conversations. But thanks for being part of
Surely.
this.